Now I
can,
can
yeah.
see something. Yeah, I can see something. Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I have a small screen here, so
Okay, so at least that's working.
okay. So Helen, you want to start announcing?
Maybe let Lado start.
Yeah, well, shall I make the introduction? Shall I make the introduction for Nardo?
Okay.
Let Lado introduce. Yeah.
Yeah, Nardo, shall I tee you up?
Yes, please do, John.
So if you let us know when you're ready, Helen, and I'll start.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Let's wait for 2 more minutes and see if we have some more people joining, and let Lado start.
Yeah, perfect. A lot of the time, there's sort of people coming in just before, and then a minute or two afterwards as well. There's usually a flurry of people.
If we have a moment, Helen, it's so good to see you. Thank you for the invitation. I wasn't able to find the invite, and I'm looking forward to hearing you, John and Nardo. Greetings from Toronto, Canada, and Dark Star Quantum Lab.
We have
Good
a
to have you
quantum
here,
group.
Dave.
Fantastic. Yeah, the moment I heard Toronto, I said, okay.
Why is that?
I think there's a lot of quantum stuff going on in Toronto, Canada. So
Oh,
anything-
yes, indeed there is. Yeah.
Yeah, Waterloo, Kitchener in particular is a real hotbed.
Well, we've been hanging out with Dr. Michelle Mosca at University of Waterloo and the Royal Science Foundation. I can't recall what it's the proper name. So we're all excited to hear from you.
Great.
Okay, let's start the recording. Okay, let John introduce Lado.
So welcome everyone to today's talk. Another excellent addition to the DC Quantum Computing Meetup. And again, just showcasing that the great work of Deb and Helen putting together such a strong series together. So today's guest is someone that combines a well thought out, diligent approach, personal excellence, humility, strong sense of ethical responsibility, and he's a thoroughly nice person to boot. So with a background spanning science, healthcare, technology, finance, and many other areas. We're lucky to have Nardo Manalotto, founder of Qubits Ventures, here today to share his insights. And from our many previous conversations, I know we're in for an outstanding discussion here today. So during the talk, we encourage audience participation. So please do put any comments or questions into the chat. If you're comfortable to do so, you're welcome to take the mic once invited. If not, we're happy to field questions on your behalf. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Nardo Manalotto to discuss quantum in healthcare and life sciences. So welcome, Nardo.
All right, John, thank you so much. Glad to be here. I am excited to share my knowledge and insight in this space, and I will go ahead and start going on and sharing my presentation here, okay? So, okay, let's do that. Are you able to see my presentation?
We can, Nardo.
Okay, great. Okay, so my talk is really all about quantum in healthcare and life sciences. So just in ways of introduction, I actually own two companies. One is Qubits Ventures, which is really a pre-seed fund investing in quantum technology startups. And the other one is Catalyze, which is an innovation ecosystem connecting technology innovators, investors, healthcare organizations, and other industries to help them all succeed. As you all know, it takes a village to make something happen in healthcare. So in ways of introduction, this is about me. I'm a computer scientist by trade, deep tech thought leader, deep tech angel investors, 25 years in deep tech and health tech experience, former head of Kaiser Permanente when it comes to Kaiser Technology Innovation and Fund. 7 years running a deep tech accelerator, which is Catalyze. And then my deep tech product experience includes AI, RPA, big data and analytics, and IoT. So I wanted to give a grounding as to what healthcare does, right? So, if you think about your own office visit, right? So this is what healthcare actually do from an inpatient and outpatient setting. And I'm just going to use some of these key words, right? So one is, we take a look at patients and observe what's going on with them. We analyze the data that's been given, right, in terms of like what's in the EMR, what the medical devices are saying, and so on and so forth. After that analysis, we basically detect what's wrong with you and make a diagnosis, right? And then part of the detection aspect are, doing imaging, doing labs and stuff like that. And then after all of that information has been accumulated by a physician, the physician would diagnose and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is your therapy. There's a lot of modeling and simulation in healthcare that happens, modeling processes and workflows, modeling lab data, modeling pricing information, and so on and so forth. So a big part of healthcare as well is there's a lot of planning happening, and there's a lot of prevention. So predicting how to prevent your disease, predicting how to create a quality of life for you. And then the last thing here is monitoring. So like remote patient monitoring, there's a lot of monitoring happening in healthcare just to ensure they can find out, regardless of what location you're at, what's wrong with you, if there's anything wrong with you. So healthcare solutions can benefit, healthcare can benefit from solutions that are innovative and are in a new category not seen before, because healthcare, the way we are going to address the patient cost and quality and care are basically through these innovative systems. We want something that are more less invasive or non-invasive, because I think the word surgery scares a lot of people, and typically it's not always a good thing to cut people up, right? And then we want something that can lead to faster and earlier diagnosis, something that can lead to faster drug and therapy development, offers better image resolution and quality, offers a level of sensitivity that we've never seen before, mainly because the more sensitive the things are, the sensors are, the better that we're off when it comes to the data. Also, healthcare is such a big user of AI, so we need technology that can handle complexity in large amount of data, and also something that could be used in a more passive manner. So you don't basically disrupt any of what the patient is doing or a person is doing. So something that can monitor them in a passive way, and then also something that can help clinicians plan for these complex surgical procedures. So you could see, if you look at this, you could see why quantum is definitely well suited towards this industry. I want to share with you some of the healthcare stats so you could see how this is relevant to quantum. So in healthcare, we perform 310 million surgeries each year. This is just the US, by the way. 2 million different kinds of medical devices that we have out there, producing tons of data. We have 270 million imaging procedures per year. We have 154 million wearable devices shipped in Q4 of 2020, and I'm sure this has probably increased. And then there are 7 billion clinical lab tests performed each year in the US. So just on that alone, it provides such a magnificent treasure trove of things that we could solve for in healthcare. And the good thing about healthcare is there is so much money going into this industry. So for the last 10 years, you could see almost a year-over-year growth of global health innovation funding. So Startup Health, one of the biggest accelerators that we have out there for healthcare startups, if you take a look at just 2021 alone, we have 44 billion in funding of 990 startups. And that's compared to just 2020, which was at 22 billion. So you could see, I can see quantum VCs and deep tech VCs, and then healthcare VCs also funding healthcare startups. So where does quantum apply in healthcare and life sciences? So what I want to do here is basically just give you a smattering of all the different types of use cases that where quantum could really apply. And hopefully this stimulates people's thinking in terms of maybe this is something that they can tackle, they can research on and progress either as a startup company or as a research institution making progress in dealing with these hard problems. So one is post-quantum cybersecurity. So if you take a look at this chart, look at the number of data breaches that we have in healthcare. And this is not something that healthcare is really proud of. You know, healthcare wants to be number one, but definitely not in data breaches. So this is a report coming out of the Department of Health Services in terms of number of data breaches for healthcare. For 341 data breaches just last year alone, compared to the next one, which is information, which is the IT portion of that, which is 306. Another one is biomedical image classification. So as you saw in the earlier slide where we have the healthcare stats, we do a lot of X-ray, CT, which is CAT scan and MRI scans. And then we have a lot of opportunity here to improve the analysis of these medical images, right? So things like edge detection, image matching, just improving the resolution of these images alone would aid in diagnostics in a much better way, right? So imagine a better image so we could easily identify and diagnose what's wrong with you. Diagnostic assistance. So in healthcare and life science, so we have what we call clinical decision support. So a quantum enhanced machine learning approach would actually help in diagnosing many diseases, even down to a single cell level type of diagnostic method, right? So I think the whole area of biomarkers, we're talking about genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, and all of that omics piece, which consists of a ton of data. You could basically help simulate and discover different types of biomarkers in this field. Precision medicine is another one. So healthcare is trying to definitely get better at precision medicine. And we're still a long ways off in this space. And I think the combination of quantum and AI would definitely help in this area as well. So one area, for example, in precision medicine is just to personalize your treatment, right? So for example, how can genomics, your genomic feature lend itself in what drugs you need to use and what therapy you need to go for and so on and so forth. So precision medicine is another one where quantum can basically have a big impact there. Let me give you an example. This one is really interesting. So Anthem, as the healthcare payer, has been experimenting with quantum in terms of the consumer healthcare experience. So this has to do with that same precision medicine, personalized medicine approach towards the use of quantum, right? So they've been using IBM Q as a test to see how they could figure out to create a personalized approach to care for all their different members. If you take a look at not just the medical data, but the claims data, payer data, and so on and so forth. So they're definitely trying to increase the quality of life and quality of care, and even the quality of insurance experience with these patients and members. Not everything is really clinical. So in the area of pricing in healthcare, there's a lot of pricing that happens. We have a lot of healthcare insurance premiums that are determined by contracts between healthcare providers and healthcare insurance companies. And these pricing negotiation often takes a long time, mainly because there's so many scenarios and simulation that they do from a pricing perspective. So things like complex interdependencies, population health levels and disease risk, treatment suitability and cost, risk exposure, networks, and things like that fall into place as part of the contract negotiation. So those are things that I think quantum computing algorithms may be able to impact and improve pricing computations. So in silico clinical trials. So what does in silico mean? In silico really means that there are no humans or animals or even a single cell, right, that's being used to do clinical trials when it comes to a particular therapy, treatment, option, or drug. So basically everything is really done in a virtual manner. So this is really a virtualized environment where you do individualized computer simulation for these clinical trials. So in this area, I think quantum computing can really advance what we call the virtual human or the complete simulation. So there's a company out there called Mode. They have a data set that contains 1,500 equations and 6,500 variables of things like body fluid, circulation, electrolytes, hormones, metabolism, and skin temperature. So think of that, right? And say, we're trying to create a digital twin for a digital human. So I could do a virtual clinical trial and simulate that in that environment. And then from that perspective, you could see how drug development, clinical trials, and even trying different therapies and different medications can get simulated in many different ways, right? So I am really excited about this portion of virtual humans. So this is just a screenshot of the Mode website. So you can see they have a lot of data sets. They have a lot of data here. So if you're interested in doing an intersection of dealing with creating virtual humans and simulating that through quantum machines, feel free to go in here and download their data set. Rapid drug designs. So this one is quite known already. There are a lot of startup companies in the quantum space doing drug design, molecule simulation and stuff like that. So pharma is pretty much been doing this in their own testing already. So I've seen a lot of pharma companies already looking into this, anywhere from AstraZeneca to GSK to Roche and those different types of companies. So here's an example of one called Polaris QB, where they're basically creating drug blueprints to cure diseases for people. And this is all done in a quantum simulation type of mode. Okay, and then DNA sequencing and analysis. So we know that DNA, there's definitely a lot of complexity when it comes to DNA, and trying to understand, not only have we sequenced our DNA and we have data and we can create data sets out of these already on an easy manner, but the key now is to figure out, okay, well, how can we sequence DNA from a genetic engineering standpoint and create innovation in this space, right? So for example, in the world of CRISPR, what if you were able to adopt quantum in the genetic engineering aspect and come up with ways to avoid certain diseases in a faster manner, in a more, not only faster, but comprehensive and even more safe manner than what we currently do now. And then we do a lot of AI in healthcare. So this one is such a buzzword in healthcare, predictive and prescriptive analytics. We have done a good job, but I think there's still many different ways to improve in this area. So if you take a look at the amount of data that we produce here, 4.4 zettabytes in 2013, 2020, we're looking at 44 trillion gigabytes, right? So that is a lot of data. So our high performance computer and classical systems are good at dealing with this, but they're not good enough, right? So there needs to be a combination of quantum and classical to work together to basically determine predictive and prescriptive analytics. So I think it's not just about the data set, but it's all about, okay, the huge number of health parameters and genetic information, sensor data, EMR records, all of that needs to get looked at. And not only do we need to detect pattern, we also need to predict many different outcomes that would lead to a prescription of what are the right things for a patient to do or for a doctor to do as well. I talked about clinical decision support as well. I think, one area that I think quantum can help at is in the area of what I call cognitive AI search engine. So if you're familiar with PubMed, PubMed has 31 million papers and growing. So a single doctor, cannot read, if they look at that and read that 3 to 4 studies per week, it'll take them their lifetime to basically go through all of that, right? So we need something that is much more faster, much more targeted, and much more, I would say, can provide more guidance in terms of the actual search itself and the result that comes out of it, and provide that level of clinical decision support for doctors. And this one is called quantum biology. So as we all know, quantum is really all about nature, right? So humans are made as part of nature, and this is an area that I'm really excited about. And recently I was at an event in Miami, and one of the speakers there said, we've only seen 10% of the use cases that quantum can tackle. I think in this area, quantum biology, I think we haven't really figured out what to do with this area yet. And I think I'm looking forward to seeing how this area can grow with the intersection of improving the healthcare and life sciences area by using, this concept of quantum biology for computation in biological interactions and light of quantum mechanical effects, and anything that's related to biological processes. So I think we can definitely grow this area as well. And then this area, so I'm going to breeze through the quantum sensing space. This is an area that I'm very excited about and really eager to fund. So quantum sensing, because the quantum sensors are already here. If we take a look at the global sensor market, which is valued at $166.69 billion in 2019 and projected to reach $345 billion by 2028. So my thinking here is that is a big market size. So, the question has always been, can all sensors become a quantum sensor, right? So if yes, then this is the total addressable market. Some of the other industry research groups out there are predicting, like US market estimated at 120 million 2021. This is from global industry analysts. The dot sensor market at 327 million by 2027 and rising. The spintronics market 591 million and rising as well. So you can see, if you kind of add all that stuff up, it's definitely a significant size. So I'm not going to go through each one of these use cases for quantum sensing, but I just want to give a sampling of what quantum sensor can apply to in healthcare. So one is in the brain scanning space, where we could have a much more fidelity and sensitivity in data in the area of disease detection, radiation detection. Oh, I think I have a duplicate here. Imaging, changing the resolution of imaging, precision measurement at scale. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation happening in the medical devices space. We're going to see, because of the sensors, some of the areas in the imaging, tumor demarcation, so we could determine the edges of the tumor much better. Surgical planning, drug tracking, drug detection, remote patient monitoring, and a lot more. These are things that healthcare doesn't do before, like, for example, particle movement tracking. So with quantum, at least with what I've read in the papers, that you can actually hone in on a particular particle inside the body and you can track its movement. So that is something that is totally impossible in healthcare right now. So I'm excited to see how this would come about. Micro movement detection, blood flow analysis, dose monitoring are a few more use cases. So I want to share with you where healthcare is at when it comes to the adoption of technology, especially in the quantum space. So on the very left-hand side, you could see where we're at, right? So we are bystanders. We are pretty much, the definition of that is no exploratory activities in quantum computing have been announced by the industry companies so far. That is not exactly true at this point. There are some that's already happening. I think we are in a transition from being a bystander to being more of a beginner. So I think that's where healthcare is at. And why is that? What are some of the challenges in healthcare? Well, we have a lot of FDA compliance and approval to go through. Industry adoption is usually pretty slow just because of the legal compliance and complexity of the industry. System transition, how do you transition from current state to future state? So this impacts, the whole people, process, technology, and services. And then because these are new things that are being inserted into, the current care guidelines, the current care protocols. So we're going to need new clinical and care protocols and guidelines, actually, right? So not just improve it. There's going to be some improvement, but we're also going to have to create new ones as well. We have to look at the patient and device safety aspect of this. There's so many unknowns in the quantum area, especially in quantum sensors. So we have to determine that it is really safe. We also need to have a lot of clinical care standards being upgraded, that's being supported from a federal standpoint, like CMS and so on and so forth. And then, the whole area of translational medicine. So we're going to see some of the data, we're going to see data that we've never seen before. And how do we need to address that? We're going to see outcomes that, physicians and clinicians have never seen before. So how are we going to address that? So another one is definitely HIPAA compliance. And then if we have the right kind of data management and analytical tools to make all this happen. And so in terms of cross-pollination, I just wanted to say, why I'm showing this slide is we talked about the pharma and healthcare side of things, but if I take a look at, let's say, something in finance called risk analysis. Risk analysis is something that also applies to healthcare and pharma, right? So there are a lot of pieces in here that also applies to pharma and healthcare, such as the high-tech component, the area of, let's say, process optimization for industrial goods, right? So that also applies to pharma and healthcare as well. So as you can see, healthcare and life sciences has a big need for quantum technologies and computing. So my challenge to you is, are you ready for your next adventure? And this is just to, I'm going to do a shameless plug. Founders Institute, I recently partnered with Founders Institute to build a quantum and photonics accelerator. So this is something we just recently launched, and we are looking for startups that's interested in joining the accelerator. So we started the call on May 4th, and we have our applications being open starting May 4th. So This is just 3 days from the launch. If you are an interested startup and would like to apply to our accelerator program, here's the link, fi.co/program/quantum. Hopefully we get to see you there. And by the way, we have several people in here that's part of the accelerator's mentor pool, including John is part of the mentor pool as well. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much. Would love to open it up to questions.
No, thanks for that. Fantastic. So we've had a few questions coming through, but I'd like to take the moderator's privilege and kick off, if I may. So obviously within healthcare, there's applying quantums, there's the fundamentals, but then finding that application and actually being able to deliver that is really the sort of secret sauce there. And there's so many different areas, whether it's non-invasive sensing, whether it's data analysis, whether it's not having to test on animals and people, whether it's personalized medicine, even personalized vaccines, and so many other different possible uses. But from a personal level, is there a particular thing that you're most excited about, whether that's near term, far long further away?
Yeah, one area is so I don't know if you've heard, John. One of the things that healthcare is really bad at is privacy and data breaches. So I'm excited on the near term on the hopefully the impact of post-quantum cryptography in this space, because we all value our privacy and confidentiality. So I'm definitely excited about that. So that's one area that I like. And one development that I really like from a consumer standpoint that recently came out was Samsung recently announced that they embedded the ID Quantique curing chip inside of their mobile phones, right? So to me, that having that option and healthcare is a big has a big use for mobile phones, tablets, and stuff like that. So just having a quantum secure device would actually help quite a bit, right? So the other one is I love quantum sensing. You can see I could probably talk about quantum sensing, for days, just because there's so much really good applications, so much different kinds of creative innovation coming out of that.
Mm. It's interesting actually knowing some inventors and founders that some of the products that they're looking at, I think sometimes the bigger challenge is actually the recognition from the wider market or users of what the potential is, which is exciting, but once the storytelling narrative and the productization is correct, that should help smooth these things through. And but yeah, I totally agree. It's really exciting, and I think probably you could have picked any number of things for that. So it was interesting to to hear those thoughts. Kevin, I see you've brought your screen on. Did you have a question that you wanted to come in on? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Kevin.
So yeah, the FI stuff caught my attention. Obviously, as a startup, most of us run into FI. So now, do you have three things, Nardo? FI and then the other two?
Yeah, they're all related because so one is an innovation ecosystem related to healthcare. The other one is a fund, and the other one is an accelerator. Because one thing I found, Kevin, is if you don't connect the dots with all of these, from an ecosystem perspective, and money plays an important role as well, nothing is going to budge in the industry. So that is basically what I was trying to do.
Okay. Could you tell us about the specifics? I know some of the FI applications have a fee. Does this one have a fee?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same, but from a fee perspective, it depends on, sometimes the startup can actually negotiate that if they want to, but we do have a fee as part of the process.
Awesome. Yeah, and I would say, because it's hard for me, I'm working with like UC San Diego and all these other universities, trying to convince them that there's applications for healthcare in quantum. And some of them still think, oh, it's only for like Tesla self-driving cars or like NASA's satellites. I don't know if I caught it, but like as far as the number, I guess it's hard to, because EHR, electronic health records, are split up in so many ways. But a lot of times they want to see like what would that be, like, gigabytes, terabytes, or even much more than that. Do you have an estimation as far as, say, a given like vital signs for EHRs, like the amount of data we're looking at?
Yeah, so if you take a look at what a hospital does, right? So there are so many devices in a hospital, right? If you've ever visited an inpatient room, right? So think of that and the amount of continuous data that goes on every day just on that alone, right? There's a lot of stuff that happens from that perspective, and this is just the current state of the devices, Kevin, right? So the moment we start getting into quantum sensing and having quantum sensor enabled medical devices, it's going to exponentially even grow. Way bigger than that, right? So if you think the issue is bad now, the issue is going to be even worse later. So we need this level of compute technology, plus the intersection of AI, to ensure that we're able to even figure out what the heck these signals means, right? So I think I'm pretty bullish that that's definitely the quantum and AI intersection is going to be great in the medical device space.
Awesome. So for quantum sensing, each sensor would require its own approval, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not just the sensor itself, the way it's used. There's going to be the level of fidelity of data that we've never seen before. So even the FDA would need quite a bit to catch up and figure out, similar to what happened with AI. So they're going to go through the same.
Yeah, and we can have this conversation offline, but basically, I think NSF, the government's quantum is a government initiative, and NSF has been funding it since the early 80s. So I think it'll catch up. I highly doubt that the FDA wouldn't ever not approve quantum.
Yeah, I think if you can do an intersection between quantum and AI, so AI, they're already approving a lot of companies from their products and solutions and technology. I think it's more around the things that they've never seen before, right? So that's an area that they need to catch up on.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thanks, Nardo. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
And Virendra, if we can bring you in next.
Yes, please. Thank you, John. Nardo, first of all, fantastic presentation, lovely slides, and definitely one small feedback and request. I think you have listed a tremendous amount of technologies and, for example, in silicon and things like that. And my basic question was coming at the COVID pandemic. And when we started working, initially we all were hearing some rumblings, oh, this is a shutdown is happening, lockdown is happening, shelter in place is happening. People are trying to buy time to get the vaccine out quickly as far as possible. But obviously vaccine prior to this pandemic was always a plentiful multi-year effort, which was beyond 2-3 years even. And this time we did come up with something fast, something quick. Some people are still facing some of the repercussions of those minimal testing or something. But coming to, for example, Moderna, mRNA techniques were there. But out of the so many technologies mentioned, if some of those you could really illustrate for us that this is where it was used, or especially particularly for this COVID vaccine, which of the simulation techniques along with AI were used? That is first part of the question. And the second part of the question, which I have as curiosity, is how far are we ready? We know Kevin shared a beautiful link about White House, and we know multi-hundred billions of dollars are being pumped for quantum innovation to promote that. And how far are we ready if any of those kind of pandemics might hit us in the future, and how far we'll be able to at that time go beyond AI and foundational stuff to leverage quantum to get to any of the vaccine or any of the cure quicker than this time?
Yeah, great question, Brenda, right? The pharma industry is definitely has been simulating a lot of drug discovery, drug repurposing type of work with quantum computers. They're definitely learning the entire process and workforce readiness and even supply chain readiness and stuff like that when things like this kind of comes in, right? So there's a lot of work there. There was a recent study that was generated that came out last year that out of 400 big enterprise companies, in terms of the number of them already adopting a quantum program, 70% of them already are adopting it. So you could see that there's a big adoption from an enterprise standpoint, and these are large companies. There's a big adoption already on the pharma side of things. That's already happening. Where the issue is, pharma has a lot of money to spend in doing these innovative technologies, right? And then you go to healthcare. Healthcare is the application aspect of what happens in pharma. And healthcare is a laggard because the amount of money there is, is hardly anything to basically do a lot of these innovations. So, and then on top of that, you have compliance and legal and safety and that you need to go for as well, right? So I think from a healthcare standpoint, we do have some time, but I think if you can, if you have an existing technology, let's say you're doing something in AI and you're starting to get into, maybe you could create a quantum machine learning algorithm of your existing AI algorithm and see if you can walk through that implementation from a healthcare perspective. And that is probably an easier way to get adopted than to build something from scratch, like where quantum sensing and a medical device would come into play, for example. So I would go that route as opposed to, here's a new category healthcare has never seen before, and traverse the adoption that way.
No, absolutely. I think very well stated that yes, when it comes to pharma and healthcare, there's, in the language of quantum, a quantum barrier which has to be, basically, you have to come across that barrier, and then all these I would say all the compliance and then new laws and everything, you have to take care of that before anything can be rolled out. And that becomes a big barrier there. And that takes time. Essentially, even if technology is providing the solution, finally to take it to a grassroots level for all people to enjoy the results.
Right.
Yeah, Virendra, there's also, it's called the FDA Breakthrough Device Program. So that's a possibility too, if we can, or whoever, so it's exponentially better and whatever, you can apply to that,
Right. No, but I think Naru made a very good point that instead of taking everything absolutely at the definition new level, if we are taking from AI and ML algorithms and applying quantum to that and taking that to the next level is much faster approach. And definitely, I talk in terms of a funny word, sustainability of technology, old technology, and then taking it into the newer level. That also makes sense, perfect sense there.
Yeah, and just one more point there, Virendra. So the other thing that you also need to think about is maybe creating a hybrid approach as well, right? So a quantum-inspired and hybrid approach. So hopefully, in some ways, it progresses earlier than later.
That's absolutely a given, whether it is people are taking it to cloud, and we settled on hybrid cloud approach, not on pure cloud or pure on-premise approach. Absolutely. Very well stated. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if we can bring in Berend next, please.
Yeah, hello, everyone. Hold on, can you see me?
No.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. Now you should be able to see me.
Hey,
hello.
Berend.
Yeah, so I'm the physician here. I'm speaking now purely from a physician's perspective and grassroots. We had that discussion somewhere else. It's generally in terms of sort of IT that it's quite important that the application is also user-friendly, and that I think there's a very big sort of gap to be bridged. I'm quite lucky that I've been attending quite a number of quantum events, and I'm constantly learning about it. But many of my colleagues, for them, it's entirely terra incognita. So it's
when I talk about what I'm interested in, they're really, really surprised. And obviously, perhaps it's also a case of having a sort of breakthrough technology in the quantum area that people can see what it's capable of, because currently what we're seeing is lots of approaches. Many of this is sort of an academic level. Some of it is sort of with actual applications, but sort of for the wider medical public actually to see the advantages, that's not yet the case, I think. And I think we also need more people, sort of quantum evangelists, and I see myself as one of these people, to sort of spread the word, because I think it has an enormous potential. And if you're careful about not over-promising, if you're understanding that it will be a journey, and I think there will be a journey, quite a long journey. I think we're talking probably 5 to 15 years, but I think a lot will happen in the next 5 to 15 years, I'm pretty sure. And I agree with Nardo that quantum sensing is a really exciting part, because a lot of what's happening in healthcare is obviously about image acquisition, or things like EEG, which then obviously if you do the magnetic potentials, you can see much deeper into the brain. So I would say that's an area that I find extremely fascinating, because it will give us medical data we've only been dreaming of, because when you normally record an EEG, you only get sort of the surface electrical fields, but magnetic fields reach very deep inside the brain. So they could get information that you basically just dreaming of, plus the higher search sort of space of quantum computers. If these two technologies could be combined, that's what I'm sort of thinking of. Quantum sensing, quantum computing, you probably could process this information to much greater detail. So anyway, that's probably future. It will take some time. So these are my few words here.
Okay. Hey, thanks for that, friend. It's good to have a physician here, right? Because typically, one of the things that I also want to ensure that technologists also get into a habit of is actually including the users as the users of the technology, to ensure that the technology not only works for them, but works for all the different types of stakeholders within the healthcare system itself, right? Because at the end of the day, the technology is meant to support them. It's meant to help them out, and you have to ensure that there's definitely that piece that happens. So Berend, I do know a startup in Colorado that is already doing. They are way ahead on the quantum sensing side, because they already have the brain scan that you're looking for. If you want to reach out to me, let me know. We should chat about that.
Yeah, I would be interested in getting involved in some way. That's what I'm looking for, because I think it's much easier for the people who have sort of physics background and IT background. But I think it would be useful as well to get us involved, basically, sort of to guide sort of applications, because at the end of the day, we have to use it for patients, and we are the ones who sort of understand that part. Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, Virendra, please.
Yeah, just to add to that, what Naro said, the startup in Colorado, there was another company which was, and it belongs to a colleague of mine, and I have to reach out to him because I'm forgetting the name of his company. It's been already in existence 5 years ago, and then he moved back to India. He's now still more into gaming side of the industry, and it was something on MRI scans, and it has been rolled out all over quite a few number of hospitals in the US. Let me maybe get that and pace out to you guys. So maybe that is of something interest. You could definitely leverage that further.
Yeah. And also keep in mind that healthcare is not just all clinical. There's the financial aspect of healthcare. There's the administrative aspect of healthcare, the operations. And so keep that in mind as you think about your own ideas here.
And I think, just echoing Nardo and Berend's comments as well, there's lessons to be learned for the whole quantum ecosystem. A lot of people that I work with that are on the business side, as they reach out to potential future users, they then understand use cases that they wouldn't have done from their own perspective. So that the ideas for the product come from the potential users. It can then be created more in tune with what's required. It gives an opportunity to create something that may not have been envisaged without that interaction as well. So I think that's a strong lesson for the whole ecosystem. And the questions are coming in thick and fast now. So Balaji, if we could, you've had your hand up for a while, if we can bring you in, please.
Thank you. Yeah, my question is whether we can make a human being a quantum computer. I mean, kind of a different view. I'm from India, so there is a possibility they have tried thousands of years back. They do meditation, they call. So that is a kind of a situation where they make their whole body as a quantum machine. They meditate in very cold places like Himalayas, and they do this type of aligning their body to a quantum state. And that way they can get the insight in the world, how the world operates, something like that. So is that any possibility that we can bring that similar to AI? AI is based on neural network of our brain. If you go much deeper in the quantum level, is it possible our brain can become a quantum machine?
Yeah, that is definitely a very good, very futuristic question there, Balaji, right? So, for example, in the quantum sensing space, so let me comment. So quantum is all about, the manipulation of, small particles, right? So atoms, electrons, photons, neutrons, right? And what are we made up of, right? We're made up of the same thing, right? So that's why I'm really interested in seeing where quantum biology is going to go, because if you take a look at quantum sensing, there's even sensors out there that I'm seeing that is interacting with cell vibration from outside the body, right? So here you have a sensor that's a quantum sensor outside the body that's intersecting, that basically is measuring the cell vibration inside the body, right? So it's think of it as like particle to particle. So what does that mean? So your thought of the quantum, the body, human body as a quantum computer, I can tell you this is one of those where, just like I said, we only know 10% of the use case of where quantum can take us. I think there's another 90% that where new use case would come out just because of the different paradigm of this compute capability.
I think it's a hotly debated sort of area because obviously the brain is sort of, any biological system is a wet system, so it's quite chaotic, and it's not at a sort of maybe sub-zero level. I mean, sort of a near absolute zero level. So, but I think Roger Penrose, he made some suggestions. He's one of the physicists. But we don't know exactly for sure if it's possible to have sort of actually entanglement in biological systems. The only thing I've come across more recently is that 3-body system, where they've shown that when you have 2 systems that are entangled, that wouldn't survive in a sort of thermic environment. But if you do have 3 systems who are entangled, or more than 3 systems, there's a chance that the entanglement could last longer when there's basically thermic noise. And I think that's the big challenge, because biological systems are messy and noisy, and there's lots of going on in terms of vibration, but basically thermic energy is just vibrations of molecules. Yeah, we will see whether there is any actual quantum processing in the brain or not. I think that's the jury on this is out probably.
And just an interesting comment, Balaji, there. I only this morning when I got up, I saw a video on Tibetan and Chinese monks who practice exactly, and they even learn how to walk on water, or very thin planks of plywood or something. They tie it with pieces of cloth. And that's the video. I'll forward that to you. Maybe that will be of some interest to you. That's how basically they are evolving their body across. And you could always correlate that to a quantum computer or quantum kind of thing. But exactly as you said, people go on all those cold places and then they align their body temperatures and everything. So all that is very nicely explained in that video. I'll share that.
I would love to see that.
So we had a question from Jedri via YouTube, who was inquiring about the sort of the current limitations within the field and the challenges therein.
Yeah, I think, well, there are many limitations, right? So limitations from a quantum perspective, right? So I think we're just in the very early nascent stages of trying to figure out, the intersection of quantum and healthcare. And then there are the healthcare challenges in itself, in which I outlined at the end of the presentation. So I think before we can even get to so you have barriers from a research, not necessarily barriers, challenges from an R&D standpoint in terms of the quantum technology itself. And then you have research that you need to do in the intersection of quantum and healthcare and what use case you want to take it to. And then on that specific use case, you have to figure out all the challenges that healthcare and the healthcare industry goes through for anywhere from FDA to patient safety, device safety, to legal compliance and things like that. So there's definitely a lot of challenges that you have to go through to basically break through in this market.
And then we had a question from Janelle. Janelle, if you'd like to come and join us. Okay, let me just scroll up and find that. It's moving quite quickly. So Janelle was wondering what kind of sense of fab development help exists in Microsoft and its partnerships and networks.
What kind of what, John?
So fabrication development, assistance with fab development.
So Microsoft, yeah. So Microsoft, they're more of a software shop, right? So they already have quantum computing as a service already available through their Azure Quantum service. So what you could do there is basically, if you're interested in learning, how quantum works and start developing on, simulations and learning about algorithms, that would be a good way to kind of look at that. The other way is through Amazon Bracket as well. So Amazon Bracket basically is another quantum computing as a service, except with Amazon, you could go across different types of quantum computer, anywhere from an annealer to trapped ions to superconducting qubits and stuff like that. So if you'd like to test it out, test different quantum computing capabilities out, that would be a good way to go.
Fantastic. And Evan, you had some questions, been quite engaged with the chat. So Evan, if you'd like to come and join us.
Hi.
Hi, Evan.
So hi. So basically, I'm looking at doing a master's in quantum computing, hopefully starting in October. So I don't know exactly if this let's say this chat is relevant, let's say, because I think it's related also to quantum computing. Am I correct?
What is the specific question, Evan?
So basically, if there is a practical application that one can do with the current quantum computers.
In terms of practical applications currently?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's definitely just starting, right, Evan? So for example, the one I recently found was a quantum sensing for brain scanning. And they've been around since the technology started. They've developed their quantum magnetometer technology, sensing technology 15 years ago. They started 15 years ago, and it's just they just did their product 2 years ago. So they've been around 2 years ago. So you have they're coming out. These practical applications are coming out. However, it's coming out with a big background in research, right? So meaning, if you have not been doing quantum sensing and developing these devices for the last 10, 15 years, it'll take you a while to basically get there. but there are some that's already happening. Some health non-healthcare ones are, for example, Port of LA. Recently had issues with supply chains and logistic optimization and stuff like that. They used D-Wave to create an annealer algorithm, like an optimization algorithm to solve that issue. So you have things like that. Samsung already having deployed ID Quantique's curing application as part of their mobile device. So you can see it's starting to get there, but we definitely need more.
Thank you.
And Ron, you had your hand up. I think it might have gone down because of we've had so many questions coming in. But Ron, if you'd like to join us.
Yeah, I had two questions. The one you've talked about quite a bit, the quantum sensor technology, and outside of that, quantum magnetometer that's going on in the Colorado area. Are there other devices out there that you know about that are actually really quantum sensors, or are they hybrid systems? I mean, you could argue that a Hall effect transistor is a quantum device, but all it does is, it's designed to give you a classic bit in or out, right? And the word quantum is a really hot word that's in play these days. So when you hear, well, we have quantum diagnostics, that doesn't explain a lot. Is the sensor itself a quantum device? Is it a classical device tied to a quantum analysis chain, that sort of thing? So
yeah, good point there, Ron. What I'm seeing is there's definitely less on the actual quantum device, right, and saying it's true quantum. There's less of that. There's more of like the classical approach, trying to move it towards a quantum approach, so the hybrid aspect. And then the other one that I keep seeing come up all the time is in the area of photonics. So there are the use of photons as detectors. So I look at that and say, okay, well, could you classify that as a quantum, or could you classify that as photonics in that space, or not, right? So I think it's still all over the place, but the hard part, the quantum specific ones, so far I've only seen one true implementation of it.
yeah, and so I guess I'm just going to make up a definition here. The device would be a quantum sensor if it actually preserves quantum state and transfers that downstream some way. My other question had to do with actually one of your very first slides. I'm in the medical software business. One of the things we were chatting about in the chat was the SOAP paradigm that providers that may or may not use, or they're trained to use a paradigm for patient encounters. I'm starting to believe that there's a lot that could be done in the subjective layer, and that's one thing that was like missing off of your slide. And the subjective phase is where the patient indicates to you what's going on, what their problem is, what they give you information. And then the next phase is objective, where you try to figure out what's right. Well, in that subjective layer, a lot of providers, everybody's probably experienced this. You go to a new doctor, what's the first thing you do? They hand you this questionnaire and you fill it out. Well, patients lie, or they don't understand, or they're embarrassed to say something, or you just insert your whatever excuse in the blank. And so I've actually have talked to some of my clients who are providers, and it's like we don't even look at that we collect it because it's part of the paradigm, but we generally just don't pay attention to it anymore. So I'm wondering if there is some way, there's some AI, or I've been looking into if there's an AI possibility for like having a virtual interviewer, where the patient, instead of filling out a form, has a conversation with a conversive AI, and that AI isn't there to give medical advice or anything. It's just basically to keep asking the questions until they get somewhere. And one area where this popped up is we in our modern day and age, a lot of medical record systems don't handle gender correctly. So and it's like nobody wants to touch it. It's like how do you deal with a patient who in a simple case, patient that just choose to express themselves as an alternate or as the opposite gender. I'm not even sure what word to use, because no matter what word you use, you start offending people here and there. But maybe in that subjective thing, it's like, are you male, female, or is it a more complicated issue? And stuff like that. So something you might want to think about adding to your presentation.
Okay, thanks for that, Ron. So it's funny that you mentioned AI. Probably these are AI avatars, right? So I've done six products in the AI space, and three of them are healthcare avatars. So I've done one for senior care, I've done one for Parkinson's disease, and I've done one for post-op discharge. And so to your point about the whole SOAP mechanism, so the intersection there of AI is really what we call observational science. We need to get much better in that in the observational science space of healthcare. Instead of just typing, we need to do a bit more passive monitoring, passive observation, and things like that. And the avatar concept is definitely a good way of doing that. So if you'd like to talk to me about that, please do reach out. And then the other piece on the gender issue, sex issue, and all that kind of stuff. I'm starting to see EMRs trying to get into what they call address me as, right? So address me as this, because I think they're trying to separate. There is quite a bit of implication related to from a sex perspective, you need to know what the sex is, but from a gender standpoint, there's a psychological and the way you're treated and things like that need to get disambiguated. So some of the EMRs I'm seeing are starting to get into what we call address me as type concept. Whether that gets implemented across in terms of what time frame, it'll be a while.
I really like that question, or that prompt, because I've actually seen people who say that male and female is so out of date, and they claim there are now 36 genders.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not go there. But anyway, all right. I'm glad to hear that there are avatars out there. So thanks.
I'm just wondering if the AI is handling this any better. Because we have seen problems before with AI. I think Microsoft's AI was online, and then people were kind of changing to some really evil sort of entity. So the problem is the AI is too good at its job. Maybe it comes across as very insensitive. So you would have to put in some filters. So at the end of the day, the AI can only be as good as you're training it. And so that's all.
I agree. I mean, the AI has to make sure that there's no sense that it's a doctor or it's providing advice. It's just there to collect data, collect information, and do it through conversation if possible.
If I could make one comment here about this AI, and since we are talking experts, systems, and the doctors, and the way all these recommendations are done in these systems. That's why when these were rolled out earlier also, we always had to have a final doctor making the recommendations from these systems. It was not purely a system-based recommendation, although we have gone much ahead in that era now. Thank you.
And we also just pushing back to the discussion around sensors. We had Zoom caller that wanted to provide a little bit further answer to that. So Zoom caller, if you'd like to join us.
Yeah, hi. So I think what I wanted to say was all the applications we talked about, for example, in finance to DNA to actual chemistry, to the extreme Monte Carlo simulation tracking particles, they essentially fit in three areas. And not all of them are related to computing per se. And we're talking about quantum computing. So I think it's very important to differentiate what is quantum computing and what is not. And one of the things is that sensing is more about microgravity perturbations in terms of your application of particular stimuli. So the way a quantum sensor works is that it detects variation in the microgravity, applying the principles of quantum physics. Whether it's using a brain scan, or whether it's using a magnetic scan, or whatever, any single time, that is the whole fundamental idea. And then you can manipulate it using magnetism to lasers to all manner of things. So first thing is to understand that all quantum sensing is doing is applying the same principles of quantum mechanics that are on which a quantum computing is based. But it has nothing to do with quantum computing. The output you're going to get at the end of the day is still going to be a classical output. So what that means is in the variable state of that output, you're going to pick up a particular signal, and that's going to be a classical signal. And the moment you have the classical signal, you lose the quantum nature of that particle. Again, it's the same quantum physics, same thing that applies to it. And in terms of quantum AI machine learning, you just have a larger space to work for. You have a Hilbert space instead of the classical space. So you have more data points to look at instead of looking at it as a 3-dimensional, or you could look at it 5-dimensional. And also to, and that's how a particle tracking will work, but also to, Balaji came in the middle and he was talking about, brain using the quantum nature of the brain. The human brain already uses, quantum physics to actually track gravity, for example. When humans are falling down, there's a sensor in the brain that already exists. It tracks how far you are from the, and based on that, it continuously adjusts itself. When the birds fly from North Pole all the way to South Pole, not literally, but they do, how do they go? How do they go there and come back? They use a quantum sensor built in their beaks. So I think very interesting to understand that nature uses quantum sensing all the way and across the board, from beetles to your human brain to bird's beak and all manner of places. And that's quantum sensing. Likewise, quantum computing is slightly different. Here, what we're trying to do is we're trying to use the principles of quantum computing and get an exceptionally high parallelization, as well as use quantum physics security. For example, what do you call it? The nature of, I'm not getting the right word. But does that thing go? There is a nature of the light itself, for example, or the quantum particle itself, that you can, it violates, for example, the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, so you cannot clone the information, and therefore it protects, I'm not getting the right word for it, but that's how the quantum security works. And post-quantum security is basically utilizing, for example, your PKI-based security or elliptical curve cryptography vulnerability that has arrived, is using a different sort of lattice-based structure to actually cover against those quantum security. So quantum sensing is very different to quantum computing, completely different things, but they all use the same quantum physics phenomena. That's all from me.
Can I just say something here? Quantum sensors can be entangled. There are a few papers. You can actually, when you have a laser, obviously, that when you have, for example, the measurements of magnetic fields, you have this sort of atomic gas, and as a laser shines through it to get the information. You can entangle these sensors. And unless you measure it, you still have a sort of entangled signal that you could process in an optical quantum computer, possibly. There must be a way. So I think, yes, most of the quantum sensors are probably currently classical in the way that the information that comes out of it is classical. But there's no reason why you cannot entangle sensors that actually gives you much more information, a much more precise signal, and you can then process that signal. If you, instead of reading it out as a classical one, you could actually leave it in the quantum domain and carry on processing it if you can find a way of feeding it into a quantum computer. That is possible, at least in principle.
So here's the thing, though. In that basis, first of all, I mean, yes, it does use quantum entanglement. So all the quantum phenomena does use quantum entanglement. But there's the thing, though, that this quantum sensing we are talking about, it is using entanglement. And you mentioned about, can we actually get a more accurate picture? The funny thing is, in the quantum world, there is no such thing as an absolute accurate picture, because all you're getting is an amplitude of variation. And when you add these amplitudes together, you form a picture. So it's a probability of amplitudes. It's a probability. And as you know, probability fluctuates. So you can say, for example, my probability is 98%, or XYZ is the probability of those amplitudes. But there is never a certain answer, unlike on a classical where you're saying that's a dead center answer, and that's because it's your voltage level on that point is high. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at this variability and point it towards a classical computing bit. What that means is that even in those variation of amplitudes, they're pointing to a 97% signal or 98% signal. That is equal to your 1. That is equal to your classical bit.
I think you're right on in differentiating quantum sensing and quantum computing. I think a point I was trying to get at is, though, is there, can we preserve the quantum information that's at the sensor? I mean, there's already mechanisms out there. People are working on like quantum key exchange, the quantum internet, which requires quantum repeaters. So there should be a way to move that information from the sensor and maintain the quantum state, or at least enough of the information. And then the other issue about the quantum computing itself is most of what I've run across, quantum computing is all based on two or maybe 3 basis states of measurement, because but a quantum particle could, in theory, hold an infinite amount of data. I mean, you have no idea, because of the uncertainty. But when you do a measurement, you do it against a basis state, and that locks you into the quantum computing realm. But again, that information can be transmitted. I don't know whether the entire state of the particle at this point can be transmitted, but I think it is a good point to just differentiate the two.
So I think with regards to preserving the quantum state, as long as you don't measure it, you preserve the quantum state. But there's another ways you can entangle your device to the existing quantum state, and therefore you're not measuring it, but you're entangling it. And you could use that entanglement for further things. Generally, what I've been seeing in the literature, they usually start with multiple initial conditions. So therefore, if a quantum state is going through X, the other initializer, which has also started with the same initial set of system, is assumed to have the same state. But it violates the principle of no cloning theorem. That means you cannot clone a quantum state from one to another. So again, this is all an approximation. And so far, there are a number of technologies that need to be developed before we can actually use, we can even talk about something so practical as we're describing. There's in the quantum sensing space, you have not only the medical diagnostics data, which is essentially, the same classical, but it's just more, your Hilbert space is more, and you are looking at how each particle is perturbed in the presence of the gravity. And you're essentially measuring that microgravity perturbation, if you like. And similarly, on the other side, in the quantum computing, you are using some of these same phenomenon to arrive at, your 0 and 1. Essentially, the way we have developed our computing is in terms of 0 and 1. In the middle, discrete values. But is the world really discrete value? No, it is not. And there is something which is outside the scope of this. There might be even more powerful computers which may work on not just in state of 0 and 1, but they will have multitudes of states which further relate to their zeros and ones, i.e. A sort of fuzzy state in the middle. And those fuzziness are their data points themselves, and they reveal some extra information. But that's I mean, we're just getting started on this. And here we have on the military, people are working on quantum radar, on the geographical fields and all that. They're looking at quantum sensing to work out what's underneath the ground, right? And in medical devices, you're looking at various different things. You're for example, tracking the biomolecular interaction on a particular protein structure, for example, as it starts, forming amino acids all the way to its entire cycle to dissociation, right? And similarly, from a brain scanning point of view, you're looking at how memory is formed in the human brain. Yeah. So there's so many use cases, but essentially it groups into those three. So one is the two of them are, i.e. the quantum machine learning and quantum neural network. They are related to quantum computing. And then you have the quantum computing itself, which is about massive parallelization, speed boost up, and having to be able to do all of this stuff. And the third part is the quantum sensing, which has nothing to do with quantum computing. I mean, you could plug it to a quantum computer to get the input output, or you could have multiples of those being processed, which is where you're using your quantum computer. But this is where I'll sum up all of those things, even those financial modeling, because financial modeling will again fit on either Monte Carlo extreme simulation using quantum computer, which are very good at, or your AI or neural network models.
So I think, when it comes to the difference between sensing, qubits, qudits, qtrits, and all the other fascinating things, I think Helen and Dev, that might be a fascinating talk to dive a little bit deeper into, and give it its own platform, because there's so much to go into there. But if we can kind of return to the healthcare aspects specifically, and Vijay, obviously you've been waiting for some time. So Vijay, if we can bring you in, please.
Thanks, John. Nice presentation and very interesting discussion. So still, artificial intelligence, machine learning has a little bit of hesitation on adopting sensitive application like healthcare or military application. Someone already mentioned that the recommendation can be given by ML, but the decision doctor has to take. So there comes the play of explainable AI or responsible AI or trustable AI, kind of that. So when quantum computers coming into play, application like in silico and clinical trials, so what's the state of art? How does it work?
Yeah, I think Vijay, there's definitely a lot more to be learned here, right? So in silico trials, you're starting to see some experimentation by companies that are in the growth mode of the intersection of drug discovery and AI, right? And basically, that area is something that they're trying to pursue mainly because they could. The speed of developing a drug doesn't only depend on the drug molecule design and simulation and all of that stuff. It also depends on how fast you could take it to market, right? So the question is it's not really around whether these computers can address the issue. The question is more around, do we have the right representation of data to represent a human in a virtual fashion that would be the same, right? So that's one of the talks that I normally hear when it comes to these digital twins, virtual human aspect, where AI is only as, or quantum and AI, and the outcome of the quantum and AI is only as good as the data that it's basically manipulating. So if you have, if your data is not represented in the right way, then it can certainly have a big impact as to what the outcome can look like, right? So I think we still have a lot to learn there.
Fantastic. And
So is there a chance that something like a quantum explainable also come into play?
Yeah, absolutely, right. So, but the one thing that you need to explain is not just the outcome of the AI, but if there's any data discrepancy outcomes that you're gonna, because right now, for example, to simulate something on, let's say just on quantum sensing, where you have a lot more kind of data to address, right, from a sensitivity level, we don't even have that level of data yet, right? So the other part is, I'm seeing a lot of conversation related to synthetic data development in the area of in the area of quantum sensing, and I said, okay, well, what are you going to generate if you don't even know what these quantum sensors really, generate in some fashion, right? So I think there's going to be quite a bit of work to happen. The explainable piece is at the tail end. We still need to address the data fidelity, sensitivity, data accuracy, and all of that stuff.
And just to add to that, explainability has been a part of classical AI and machine learning, which has been done much earlier, many years ago. For example, if I recall some of the concepts people might have leveraged, it was query the user concepts and all those things, where you basically keep the trail and then you use that to put the explanation out. And as Nardo very rightly said, now that was the classical piece of AI, that was the classical computers handling minimal amount of data, from the comparison of quantum computer, where we want to handle them tons of data as compared to the classical. That's where the main distinction comes to my mind, that where we can use minimal variables or kind of more limited variables as compared to the explosion of variables when we, for example, leverage all these pieces into any of the areas like natural language processing or computer vision or anything. And I believe in one of the last examples we had talked about, we had seen how just from identifying in computer vision about 9 character set to simply colorful images, that goes into explosion of variables. So that's where the explainability could be there, but then the challenge would be, as Naru said, we have to learn still a lot how we put that into the explainable and more useful, I would say, a readable form, where we say, this is how we arrived here, this is how we got to here, and this is what we have achieved. So that's like explain and trackability and trail, which we call in databases. All that pieces of the puzzle are there, and how fast, how early we'll be able to basically take that AI ML based concepts into the quantum arena. That's where I believe good challenges are still ahead of us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Narada and Virendra.
Thanks, Vijay. And Rajiv, if you'd like to come and join us now.
Thank you, John. Excellent presentations, Nardo. Thank you for sharing your slides and your wisdom about them. What I want to talk about is, first of all, the prior discussion that we heard shows that there's a lot of confusion in terms of what is quantum engineering, what is quantum computing, what is quantum detection, what is quantum sensing, and what is quantum noise. So let me touch upon that briefly. And then I'd also like to describe a project that I'm working on that has a lot to do with healthcare. So, when we look at quantum computing today, there's the engineering aspect, which is the manufacture of the devices that do the detection of quantum particles and then create, various state changes. And then there's the hardware that runs the actual quantum circuit based on the state changes that occur within quantum particles that are comprised of qubits now. And these qubits are now made part of a quantum circuit in which there is gate-based and non-gate-based quantum computational approaches. So, the aspect that we are trying to touch upon in terms of applicability has a lot to do with how do you do state preparation before you can subject qubits that contain your quantum states as the information in a matrix form as input to the quantum circuit. The quantum circuit then executes the input data set and comes out with a state that is then observed that collapses it into bit streams that are zeros and ones that now become classically readable. So, having described this whole approach, the state preparation is where there's a lot of fundamental error that can be introduced. In quantum detectors, there's noise that comes in from other particles, or dark noise as we call it. And so when we encounter noise in detection or noise in emission of quantum particles, then obviously it affects our ability to retain the entanglement, and therefore it decoheres. So as long as you can maintain coherence, you can continue quantum calculations. But if it decoheres, then the quantum circuit breaks down at that point. I won't go too far into detail, but this is one of the biggest areas and challenges in terms of quantum detection, emission, and sensing. Noise is really a big problem in state preparation. Noise is also a big problem in quantum circuits as the information that is input propagates down the gates that are operating in the quantum circuit on quantum hardware. Various types of hardware have different types of noise. And then finally, the readout is where you can also have errors that are introduced that result in an incorrect readout. So, these are the challenges that we are facing in terms of quantum engineering of detectors, sensors, as well as the quantum hardware that does the actual execution of quantum algorithms. Now, having said all this, let me focus on applicability. Quantum applications are real-world applications that require real-world scalability. And we've all seen classical computation immensely scalable. Quantum computers are not at that scale because of the noise issues and the error issues that I just talked about. So how do we make the best of the existing quantum hardware that is available to then bend it to our will and create quantum applications that mean something in the real world context? That's the challenge that I'm focused on. I have a little bitty startup that I've been doing as my side hustle called Pivotport. I have a day job that I won't talk about, but Pivotport is a company that is doing some innovative work in quantum applications using quantum algorithms on the existing limited quantum hardware that we have, and trying to figure out how can we operate by using a classical and quantum hybrid approach where you use HPC for classical, for bringing in large data, and then slice it down so that you can compute effectively for signals that can have meaningful impact in terms of speed of computation. So there was a prior mention of brain scans and the ability to use quantum for doing EEGs, for example. There are so many signals in biometric sense that the human body puts out that it's a very rich field. Even if we don't talk about how are we going to measure it, there's a lot of classical signals or analog signals that can be digitized at the bedside or in the ambulatory context, right? And when we look at cardiovascular disease, I look at waveforms, ECGs, and create quantum circuits that are able to process ECGs and detect anomalies.
Mhm.
It's a very simple statement. It is extremely hard getting to that. Why is it? Because quantum circuits come into play. You can do quantum simulations, which are on classical computers that give very clean results, but are very limited because they take a long time and can't have the scalability that a real quantum circuit is professed to have if you had 1,000 qubits or 1,000,000 qubits available, right? But you can still detect anomalies faster on a quantum circuit than a classical circuit or a classical computer. So I'm trying to do those things. And recently we've started developing a simple application that takes ECG signals that are standard signals, just ticker tapes that we are all used to seeing in movies and such, or if you're doctors, you're seeing that on a daily basis for the patient. Take the ECG signal, detect and slice out anomalic regions, and then identify them using machine learning. So, classical machine learning takes a long time to identify these signals. And, quantum machine learning can be used to train classical machine learning models much faster. And so we can use QML to train CML to do identification of these anomalies and spit out results much faster that make a difference in terms of what is an ECG going to do to benefit a cardiac patient. So I just wanted to mention that, there is context that you can take with limited quantum capabilities on the hardware today, where you can actually bend it to your will and make it do useful things.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rajiv. Indeed, so this is what I meant about the first step towards stepping towards the use of quantum in healthcare is really not go full quantum, right? Yes. You basically have to really be more on the hybrid approach or quantum inspired approach first. And I'm seeing a lot of technology companies basically creating what we call transpilers, even code generators to basically generate, out of a C++ type of code, generate the right kind of quantum code, right? It's like, okay, so, there's definitely a lot of stuff happening there, but at the end of the day, even if you have a full implementation of quantum is only good at certain areas. It's not going to be good at everything, right? So the world that we're targeting is really more of a hybrid approach. So application needs to be hybrid, and you need to get used to that kind of a modality. So for us in healthcare and life sciences, in order for us to proceed here, Rajiv gave a really good example of how we were able to make progress is really from a hybrid approach. And see, even with the limited capabilities of our quantum computers right now, he's able to do something like that, right? So I'm looking for more examples in this space because the area that I'm interested in, especially as an investor, is in the areas of transpilers, code generators, creating connectivity from a system point of view, so you could connect quantum, GPUs, CPUs, QPUs, and all of those different things into one system, because that's the next world. So kudos to you, Richie.
Thank you.
And Jedri, if you'd like to come in now.
Hello, how are you all? I thought I heard you. My name is Jedri, and I'm at Brown, and I'm studying public health. But I'm actually running a startup that actually focuses on incorporating, like you were just saying, the connectivity of systems, and by using like healthcare models that are rely on equity and stuff like that. So like at the core, I'm studying spoken language systems. And so my question is, how can I interface the current state of the spoken language systems with the quantum, connectivity that you are seeing right now with the algorithms and all these kinds of things? if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think one thing that I'm seeing in the area of startups, in the area of translating what we currently have in AI and machine learning, Jetri, is there seems to be a lot of collaboration happening between quantum scientists and engineer and computer scientists, right? Because this is the area where we still need a lot of work to basically say, how do you translate what we currently we're doing on AI classical, and how is that going to work with the quantum machine learning version of that, right? So there is a missing piece that is not being bridged there. As far as I know, there's only one startup in the Europe area that is tackling that space, and they are building a team of quantum people and computer scientist people to figure out that bridge. So as far as how to do that, I think that is probably for people much smarter than I am. Jedri,
No, give yourself some credit. Come on.
So in my perspective, that's the level of collaboration that needs to happen between computer scientists and quantum scientists and engineers. It's that translation level of how do you actually create maybe it's even an intermediate language or a translator type language that can basically go in between the two, right? So that's why there's a lot of work happening in the compiler space in this area. So if you are pursuing something in this area, that's what I would suggest, is really that collaboration between computer scientists and quantum scientists.
No, I totally agree. This collaboration is needed, and I'm struggling to find someone who is as passionate about healthcare and those two other domains.
Are you looking for a computer scientist passionate about healthcare?
Yes. Okay. Especially, I heard someone say that I'm talking about natural language processing, but but I'm also talking about natural language understanding. So that's why I said spoken language system, because that incorporates pretty much that and text-to-speech systems. So what I meant by spoken language systems, I meant incorporating pretty much everything that we know about natural language. And I want to use quantum computing because somebody mentioned earlier something about providing quantum support vector machines as a way to interface, like a hybrid approach you were talking about. So can you explain to me what a quantum support vector machine is currently looking like in the state of computer science? I mean, in quantum computer science.
Yeah, I think it's definitely still in its early stages, Jedri. It's going to take a while to basically get there. Quantum vector machines. I think definitely more research needs to happen there. But there is one startup I'd like to point you to that is already doing QNLP. Right, so you probably have heard of Continuum.
Continuum,
Right.
I think I saw it on LinkedIn. Are they on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think they are a pretty well known company out there. They basically just came out with something this year, early this year, on their QNLP product. So they were able, so maybe worth exploring for you.
If I may jump in on
the background on that, Jedri, is that so Continuum were a merger from Honeywell Quantum Systems and Cambridge Quantum. So Cambridge Quantum were the side that were pushing ahead with QNLP and other software code-based aspects. Honeywell were more on the hardware side, so they've now merged together. I think it formally went through last year, but there was talks about it for a while. But they're now looking at a full stack model, and QNLP is a big part of what they're doing.
If I may just chime in the middle with regards to this particular thing. So one of the things I think you might like to look at is, and just beginning with an example, just going slightly technical and deeper into it. If you look at a word, the word itself is word. Let's not call it word. Let's call it something that has maybe multiple meanings. For example, can you come up with a word which has multiple meanings?
Like semantics.
Semantic.
Computers can't do that right now. There's no way.
Yeah, exactly. So, so essentially, when human brain actually learns a word, how does it actually work? Originally, until now, the expectation has been that, hey, it's a three-dimensional structure and all that. But then there's a group of scientists in Switzerland, sorry. They're running a project called the Blue Brain Project. And essentially what they found is that human brain, the way it actually structures information, is composed of 11 dimensions. Now, if you want to do work with 11 dimensions, and so a word has correlation to, let's say, if there was a word called cat, and cat means many different things, one of the meaning being cat, and you attach context to each of those words, at what point is the context? So what is the present context, and how do you relate to that word? And this is where quantum computing can be really useful, because it can help you correlate with that 11 dimension of this correlation. Because quantum computers are particularly good at is fast searching, right? And this is where I think this can really help. But then again, also because quantum computing, they work in Hilbert space, unlike our classical, which is a limited space. And therefore, you're dealing with more data points. This is where it can actually help. And also from a point of quantum machine learning, again, it helps in the similar sense.
And Jedri, if you're interested in talking about some of this NLP and NLU, NLG type of work, since I've done some work on the avatar space in healthcare, I'll be happy to chat with you after as well.
Of course, yeah, I'll connect with you as well. I don't know if we're going over time, but I have another question.
Go for it.
Please.
Okay, so you were talking about the dimensions of the words. So the dimensions of the words, I seek to integrate, like I said, equity is part of like my startup. So when I try to tag the words and to add context to them, like I want to integrate family models, and that comes from like my understanding in health. So is it possible to make something that's like more robust by adding more domain knowledge, right, to the tagging or to the context of the 11 dimensions? Will that kind of I guess add how do you do that is my question. Like, how do you add tags to that when you're trying to add like a theory, like a model to the dimensions? Has anybody encountered that at all?
So I think, although this is beyond the scope of what we're discussing, but just to answer your particular thing, and this is a way to how you might like to approach it. Instead of attaching tags, look at it as a mesh, as a graph that's infinitely looped to each other. So you have got a word that has multiple connections to other words, and these are looped to each other as part of the language. How do you traverse that path, that infinite loop, and keep coming back to your actual context where you started? And that's where quantum computing is really quite interesting.
Fantastic. Thanks everyone on that. And Nardo, I'd like to sort of come back to something that we touched on earlier. So obviously you wear a few different hats. You've got a number of different interests. But I know that there's a stable of organizations that you work with, and I appreciate some things you may be able to talk about, some things not. But I'd really like to dig a little bit deeper on some of the sort of exciting projects you're working with, and if there are things that you're able to discuss here, and what sort of projects and future pipelines you have.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that, John. Good question. So definitely, I'm quite busy on the fund side. There's a lot of really interesting companies out there that is really coming up, right? So one thing I can say, some of the companies that I funded, one is a company that is a room temperature photonics based quantum computer company that is has a roadmap that's doing dual photon detectors, photonic quantum chip on the way to a quantum computer, right? So I funded a company like that. I funded a company that is in the quantum battery space. So using quantum physics to improve performance and storage of energy. So another interesting company. Another company that's in the global timing distribution service that basically can help us because in the new world of high performance computing, quantum computing, we need a better timing service to help with communications and applications. So I funded a company like that. And then the last one that's also part of my portfolio is a one that is using quantum photonics to improve data transfer. So they're part of the whole, data center of the future for quantum. So that's another interesting one. And the next one that I'm very keen at is looking at a programming editor that you can program on one interface, but the system can transpile to many different quantum computers. So that's and not only transpile to one, but you can actually segregate your code to transpile on one section for maybe classical computing and one section maybe for quantum computing. So these are the kind of companies that are out there, and many more. I've seen interesting companies creating new materials. I've seen even new crystals, right? New crystals, the basic that acts like a qubit, but also and has really interesting properties that goes well beyond the qubit, right? So I'm seeing things like that. I'm seeing the intersection of quantum and space. I'm seeing definitely a lot of projects in that area as well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that some of these things that are seemingly siloed in different areas, but over time will gradually move closer together and interact with each other. And it's that integration aspect of the sort of quantum ecosystem, and internally but also externally, is really fascinating. So with regards to that, the sort of the stable that you work with, what's your sort of view on how to encourage that integration both within your stable and externally, to really, I suppose, harness the benefits of that diversity of thought?
Yeah, so that's why, John, I am so interested in and have been working hard in building an ecosystem, right? Because this kind of work, it's very hard. And then, you're thinking about the quantum work, and then that's only one portion of the challenge. And then you're thinking about the applicability of all those technologies that you bring into the industry. That's another challenge, right? So in order for that to happen, and that's why I'm connecting all of my companies, right? So I have the fund, right? Qubits Venture. I have Catalyze, which is the innovation ecosystem, and that's very healthcare and life science oriented. And then I have the quantum and photonics accelerator, because I need to kind of create a scenario where, how do I translate and support startups that are building the quantum technologies aspect of things? How do I bring these startups into the industry aspect so they could partner with industry and make sure that their technology is applied correctly and done correctly, right? And do that. And then the other part is, how do I accelerate them from coming out of academia and research and living into really the industry and applied world, right? So it takes all that to make something happen.
Yeah, and I think that, with the different hats that I wear, obviously being a recruiter by background, my role at One Quantum and Quantum Strategy Institute and forthcoming Founders Institute, one of the things that's really sort of struck me over the last 2 or 3 years is that kind of integration piece, whether it's employer employee, nation to nation, government, academia, industry, or physics and biology, classic and quantum, whatever it may be. There's so many different areas that are in the process of sort of fusing together, and with you being sort of right at the forefront of that, with regards to the implementation of these applications, real world implementations, what do you see as the sort of the most exciting near term potential applications within healthcare?
Yeah. So to me, I think, John, to your point, I think one of the things that healthcare, so healthcare can benefit from the applications, absolutely, short term, mid term, long term. I think what healthcare needs to actually get going is in the area of really readiness, right? Readiness from a workforce perspective, ready that piece of it. Healthcare is definitely not ready. So, but what I'm seeing in the healthcare side of things are now you're seeing people being hired in healthcare that are called, that are head of quantum, right? So in my former organization, big organization, they have a head of quantum. You already saw Anthem. They've been doing quantum for quite a while, right? So I'm sure all the others will follow. So I think workforce readiness and really trying to figure out what is the impact of this technology over to the industry is one area. So to me, I'd rather have healthcare do proof of concepts and start working with the startup industry, start working with the innovators and the researchers to actually really figure out what does it really mean to me, not just from an applicability standpoint, but how to get ready. So to me, a big part of what I do is I'm trying to promote that. I'm connecting people like you, people like people in the marketing space that basically can market on quantum, people that's doing business education readiness, people that are doing quantum companies that are doing proof of concepts, with large enterprises. I'm connecting those as well.
And I think actually the workforce piece, just as one example, over the years we've seen that there's more and more intelligent, bright, energetic people coming into the space, but the requirement for those people always grows exponentially more quickly. But the kind of, I think the consolidate, that people talk about a talent shortage, which I don't think there is. There's a skills gap rather than a talent shortage, but sometimes it's people will have certain valuable skills, but then transitioning that into something that the classic example, someone coming from academia, a little bit of polishing up some of the non-technical skills makes them ready to enter into the commercial arena, and I think that evolution rather than revolution around those aspects is really important. The other thing that you touched on that I think is very interesting, but I think very relevant within healthcare particularly, is the juxtaposition between the sort of the startups, the new guys on the market, or the existing organizations, many of whom have a real big footprints and a global multinationals with billions of dollars budgets, and what the interplay may look like between the new kids on the block and the established organizations there.
Yeah. So, well, one thing I can tell you, if you're talking about industry will probably, they normally stick with their core competency, right? So they're not gonna, go outside the lane and say, oh, let me create a quantum startup from internally. So that's never going to happen. However, they do support a lot of the technology companies in the way of what they call innovation funds, John, right? So these innovation funds are really meant as a vehicle for large enterprises to basically say, okay, I still want to remain competitive. I want to figure out whether this is something that I need to go for and not. And the only way to do that is to work with these very smart startups and to figure out whether the kind of technology and the products that they have would work within the setting, within the healthcare setting or life sciences setting. So I don't, and then if everything works within within a large enterprise standpoint, then they have a lot of these companies have what we call corporate venture arms, right? So they have a way to promote these startups from, maybe a one single facility pilot, it becomes two facilities, then it moves up to multiple departments, and then up to a region, then eventually to a national level. And then once you get into that level, you're looking at corporate ventures, right? So corporate ventures will start giving you, in order to protect their investment, a lot of corporates would love to give their startups that they, in a way, accelerated internally, money. So I've seen that work with my work in Kaiser Permanente, where we definitely corporate ventured several of the companies, tech companies, from deep tech and many different areas at scale.
And just with that sort of interplay, so within the quantum ecosystem, where it's still at a nascent stage, there's a lot of inter-organizational collaborations that happen. You look recently, Pfizer BioNTech, for example, has garnered quite a bit of publicity. But is there that within something like healthcare, where there are more established players, is there that desire to collaborate, or is it more the sort of the sensitivity of knowledge, or something in between? How do you view that collaboration and interplay?
Yeah, so where healthcare is at right now is there is definitely a desire to collaborate, right? The issue with healthcare right now is, if you talk to executives, right, even if they're technology-based executives, what you're going to find is there's quite a bit of education that we need to do with these business folks, right? Business and IT folks, because first of all, some of them probably have not heard of what quantum really is, right? And some of them, even if you educate and basically say and give the very basic as to what quantum computing is, or what quantum technologies or quantum sensing, and just to give the very basic, it still goes above their head, right? So the only way they can imagine this is, to them, it's never about the technology, it's about the applicability. So that's why I'm so keen on presenting more of the use cases. Hopefully it stimulates a lot of thinking in the audience, and say, okay, healthcare is a big industry and there's a lot of things to solve. And hopefully this is an industry that they're going to go for, instead of, the typical finance industry, or oil or energy industry, things that you normally would think of when it comes to quantum.
I think it's interesting, actually, what you mentioned with execs. There's the kind of the mindset that it's about that storytelling or narrative, and you have the things that are the exec understands. So an example might be software. Then you have the things that are linked to that closely enough to be able to extrapolate. So that could be data. Then the things that are outside of that realm. So that could be quantum in this analogy. And then there's a challenge of, how do you get quantum inside move quantum inside one circle, so that then becomes part of the conversation and becomes normalized. And I think the messaging is being done well, but as with most things, things are happening quickly, but you always wish it happens a bit more quickly. So it's interesting to hear that dynamic within healthcare, but reassuring that collaboration piece is strong and robust. And Jedri, so I noticed that you had your hand back up. Was that raised again, or was that from the previous time?
You're on mute, Jedri.
Oh, hey, sorry about that. Can you hear me good?
Yeah, we can now.
Okay, great. I was just listening to you guys have a little interchange in it. I was wondering about these skills gaps, especially Nardo, in your experience, you're in the field, these skills gaps, what kind of programming or book would you suggest that can maybe address these skills gap between quantum computing and traditional, the classical computers? Is there what's out there in your research, in your startups and all that stuff?
Yeah, so it's been a while since I did some programming here. So I think what you want, or you're looking for, like a translation between or an integration between systems, right? So I think those kind of books are, as far as I know, I haven't really seen any of that kind of stuff being written, because first of all, people really don't even, there's just beginning to basically translate all these pieces, right? So, maybe our Zoom caller, he seems to be familiar in this area. Maybe he has some suggestions there if they exist. But I haven't really seen it. It's really up to you. So this is what I'm saying. As a startup, I look at you and say, what's going to make you valuable? It's that work. It's that translation work that you're doing that's going to make you valuable. It's not because you found it in a book. So as an investor, I look at that and say, oh, Jedri and his startup is basically creating something that is useful to pursue and creating IP and patents around that is valuable from an investor standpoint, right? So we're really looking to you to basically make these kind of things happen. So if I were you, instead of relying on a book, I think it's good to rely on a book, but you have to create the technology to make these kind of things happen.
I think
if I may chime in on that.
So, sorry, 1 second, Zoom caller. Just with regards to that, Jedri. So obviously, I give advice to lots of organisations and individuals, and actually, something that's often that's often heavily overlooked, but is actually the kind of the cornerstone of it, is to work out what you want to do. What are you interested in? What are your goals? What are your aspirations? Because if you don't know where you're looking to travel to, it's very difficult to find the route to get there. So by having a clear understanding of what your aspirations are, understanding that things will change, no plan survives contact with the enemy, but having that goal focus and then working out what the resources you need to implement that, I think that's a really good starting point. And I think dovetails quite nicely with what Nardo mentioned. Zoom caller, you had some comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, on the basis of asking which language to learn, which not to. I think because I come from multiple sciences, and my view is, if you want to approach this, first of all, define your problem domain. What is the problem you're trying to solve? And there are a multitude of tools out there. So somebody mentioned Python in the chat. So IBM Qiskit, for example, uses Python. But there's also Microsoft Q#, which is an object-oriented way of doing that. There is also Circ from Google. There's tons of framework out there. And you know what? By the time quantum computing does become prime time, this whole thing might change again, and there'll be tons more. So the most important thing is try to define your problem. What is it you're trying to solve? And the rest is about tooling. You can get the best tool when you're ready for it, because that's all about tooling. Tooling changes every time. Today, the tooling, somebody's mentioning Python. Tomorrow, by the time you define your application, when you're ready for it, the tool might be completely different. So become tool agnostic, become framework agnostic, become cloud agnostic. Just focus on the what is the problem? You know what I mean? Yeah, that's all for me.
Right, I totally agree with being agnostic. That's the part of, I think, the whole framework of my startup. It's about being agnostic, but also, centering that around the problem of my startup. So my problem specifically is caregiver burden in the home care setting, and that relates to pretty much stress and anger. So I guess those are my problems, and I'm trying to, I guess, mitigate and provide interventions for those kinds of things by utilizing this natural language processing system. But now I'm learning that to innovate and move it forward and use it in the ways that I want to use it, I need quantum vectors. so
So here's the thing, though, that when you have people in care home setting, right, and you are looking at language, it is quite possible that people are, when they're in that state in healthcare and having looked at this, they're even unable to express them in a visual or verbal way. Sorry, not visual, but verbal way. So for healthcare settings and considering accessibility, one of the things I was looking at is people, for example, implementing an interface, a physical interface, for example, that is button. So, pressing a button that does something. So pressing a red button means alarm, is there a fire in the room, or I'm hungry, or, because those people are cut off from the life. They're particularly in the times of COVID. How do you address those challenges? Those are the vulnerable people. They might not always be able to articulate what they want to say. So what is the quickest interface for them to use that interface so that they can get help? Sweet, verbalizing may not be the most appropriate answer. And this is why understanding problem domain is very interesting. And also to break down your larger problem into smaller subsets and tackle those individual subsets, that help to achieve and narrow down the scope.
Right, and the scope that I'm going at, I think would be improved by what you just mentioned, the physical interface. But that's the thing about like focusing and narrowing, right? Like if I go ahead and add like a physical interface, like your specialty, which is probably like sensors, right? Like quantum sensors, like that kind of stuff. I think it's adding like more to the complexity of my mission, which is public health equity, right? So I could later on, I guess, add like a physical interface. I was reading a paper about that. All the data, like, the phone dropping, the phone vibrating, that in itself is a sensor, right? Like all that data, like programming that to make it make sense and delivering an output that makes sense, because now it knows that, oh, they pressed that button, so they're in the other room. So let me go ahead and talk in the other room, if that makes sense. For the product that I'm building, right? So doing this physical interface will probably be really, really marketable, like to add more, complexity and dynamic to the code.
I think, Jedri, I just want to make sure, right? So don't get caught up with, sometimes, a lot of startups get caught up in the in building too much technology, right? So sometimes healthcare,
right,
at the end of the day, it is looking for simplicity and not complexity, right? Because I used to work for Kaiser Permanente. I've done thousands of analysis and funded many different companies to do pilots in Kaiser. And generally what we found is those that basically have too much technology sometimes don't get passed because the user experience sucks, right? Mm-hmm. So when you look at the problem, it's not just about the problem. You have to look at what's important to healthcare, which is care quality, cost consideration, and user experience. So if you can't answer those three things, within your product and technology and what you're going for, and of course it needs to work, right? It needs to work. Then regardless of how much technology, quantum or not, you're not bound for success there. When you look at the problem, it's not just about.
And hopefully that's given plenty of food for thought there, Jedri. And Ron, you've got your hand up as well. If you'd like to join us.
I just wanted to say a couple of words about the tool chain. In my career, I've been fortunate to work on a number of different compilers, and so I have a specific interest in what the current and what the future quantum computing tool chain will look like. So there is a lot of sense in not getting too wound up in a language, but if you're going to start today, Python's a good place. It'll get you into machine learning, it'll get you into quantum. But there may be a whole new language that evolves just to service quantum computing, and the tool chains may need to stretch quite a long way. If there's a major breakthrough in quantum hardware, we could be looking at a huge gap, just like we're looking at the same kind of gap in GPU hardware versus software that can keep it busy. And the tool chains we have today are still mostly based on text. What about ways to program quantum computers that go beyond that? And a quick example would be back in the day when CAD systems were big. You had a keyboard and a mouse, and then someone figured out that if you have somebody invented something called the space ball. which is a six-axis free space dimensional mouse, and it made three-dimensional CAD rendering all that better. But again, that was something that had to be developed after the stuff was there. So there may be something similar to that in the quantum world, where we might have to leave text behind. I don't know. Nobody knows at this point, but you get the fundamentals down of quantum for sure, and then hopefully the future will bring us some really great stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, this is the kind of thinking we need, Ron, right? So that's why, in order to make stuff happen, we are in front of the right kind of people, that can basically say, okay, well, we have to reimagine and maybe think, maybe there's a different way of doing quantum, right? Or, when you say about the certain language, maybe there's a new language coming out, there are new programming tools coming out, there are new OSs coming out, right? So these are the areas of interest that I've always been tracking. And there are some stuff still quite a bit of void there, but I'm bullish that somebody out there smart will figure this out.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's that continual evolution. Even if there was a theory for everything, that still wouldn't stop innovation, because how it's applied would bring new things to the table. And I think that's the exciting, one of the really exciting things about working in this space, is that you don't quite know what's coming next, or quite how it will be applied. And I think that's something to keep hold of, and always sort of treat every day as a day to learn something that it sets you off on the right track. Zoom caller, you've got your hand up. Would you like to come in again?
Yeah, I wanted to just say two things. That firstly, with regards to quantum computing, the way where we are right now, something that really changed classical computing, we have to understand, there used to be these vacuum tubes, and then suddenly we have one direction semiconductor. And it was a semiconductor that led to the transistor and the IC, integrated circuit, that lead to an amazing jump into the classical computing. In the quantum computing world where we are right now, we are just manipulating with one or two particles. We're not even at the vacuum tube stage, or even at the transistor stage, or forget about integrated circuit chip stage. And similarly, a lot of our ideas on our programming and others are based on what we currently have. But one thing to understand, that there's one way of looking at it. In the early days, you could look at the matrix multiplication to even the quantum physics and all manner of things. But I think as we use classical computing languages today, for example, in C# we call something .sort. It goes and sorts it out. We don't need to really worry about what kind of underlying sorting algorithm is using. And quantum computing, if it is to become universal, as it will happen, it will eventually end up in the same way, that we might need to, a lot of programmers, they will use that as an API, as a system call, without having to worry about how does this system call actually work? What sort of quantum entanglement base it applied, or things like that, or whether the amplitude was 97% or not. Nobody will have to worry about. And that's where it becomes a computing for the masses. Just to be aware of that is, I think, is the way we are right now, where we are heading. I think it's to, right now, all we can do is to help that journey and understand as much basics of this as possible, not just in terms of mathematics, but also to form the intuition. So for example, when you say 2 + 2 = 4, you don't really sit down and calculate 2 + 2 = 4. It's intuitive that 2 + 2 is 4. And you want to develop that kind of intuition towards quantum computing, because that will lead to further understanding of the whole structure and how to utilize your problem domain to present for quantum computing. And again, to Gendry, quantum computing is maybe not the panache for everything. It could be a tool, but maybe you might like to start at something very basic. And then you look at, do I really need quantum computing? Do I really need quantum technology? And gradually build up from where you are to the next phase.
And I think a lot of that intuition, having a generation that grows up as a quantum generation, so it's been around them. The people that have grown up with that around them won't have to sort of unlearn what they've been taught before learning. So for a child, some of the fundamental principles of quantum, it could be it could be applicable to a fairy tale or something like that. So they don't have to suspend their disbelief in the same way that someone's been brought up in a classic world would have to when looking at the quantum world. And Nardo, I know this is something that we've sort of discussed on a number of occasions. So and being something that I know you're passionate about, I'd like to sort of bring you back in on that, please.
Yeah. So you're talking about, John, the integration of the classical and
yeah, and having a generation that hasn't been brought up classically, or has been brought up with exposure to quantum, rather than having sort of pivoted later on.
Yeah. So in terms of the workforce, I do see there's quite a bit of difficulty on pivoting people from into quantum. So even current technologists, even AI enthusiasts, right, and AI programmers, they have to figure out the concept of the impact of what is superposition, entanglement, decoherence, error correction, and all of this stuff, right? In which before, these are things that they don't have to address, because and these are things that's not necessarily easy to think about. So I think the quantum generation, as John alluded to, is definitely one of those. It's like my kids, right? So they grew up with an iPad. So they can navigate the iPad, no problem. It's all natural to them. So this generation that's growing up in the quantum world, even high schoolers, we have groups that are teaching high schoolers now in terms of what the quantum principles are, or quantum physics, and just starting them early on, learning about the concepts of quantum programming and things like that. So as the next generation comes in, it's just natural that the new generation would talk the language in a more natural way.
Yeah, and I think just referencing some of the work that's happening, I would certainly highly recommend Community, and that's Q-Unity, and the CEO Anisha Musti, who is phenomenal. And with it being a healthcare conversation, I think Anisha's got she's had an incredible journey. So she wrote a quantum algorithm on a quantum computer that identifies Parkinson's disease at an early stage through slight imperfections in the vocal cord. Now Anisha created that about a year, 18 months after she first got into quantum. I haven't added the fact that she got into quantum at 14 and had done this by the time she was 15, around her normal school days. So that just a little example of what the future may hold with such incredible people. I know, Nada, you've met Anisha as well. It's phenomenal the work they're doing, and also with Community to educate both school children, but also older people as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating that what Anisha has done, and not only that, she's created. She's also does training not just for high school kids and college kids. She does training. She's also on her roadmap. She's also doing training. She's going to be doing training for business readiness. So it's she's definitely schooling a lot of the old folks out there in what quantum is all about. So that's the new kind of generation that's out there. That gives me quite a bit of hope.
And I think as well. So we're obviously we're overrunning at the moment. But what I would like to do is just sort of come back and in summary, really just look at the how you see things developing, what your sort of hopes and concerns are, and just really sort of bring some of these themes together for everyone. Nardo.
Yeah, so to me, there's definitely a lot of work to be done in the quantum space, right? So I think so in order for us to execute properly, it's really about the people, right? So the people and the community and the ecosystem that gets us all connected together, right? So because the people needs to get educated on this, the people needs to know what are impacted and the overall ecosystem in order for us to progress, right? So what does the ecosystem look like? Well, the ecosystem is not just startups and investors and industry people. We also have to consider the government folks, the policies underneath these kind of things. I can tell you there's even ethics that needs to get addressed in this area. New kinds of laws, new kinds of business models that needs to get addressed, right? So the ecosystem is really what I'm looking at. So I think if we are able to connect as an ecosystem and see and share each other's work and share each other's insights and perspectives, I think that would help us progress and accelerate in a much faster manner.
Yeah, I couldn't concur more. So I'd just like to say, Nardo, thank you. What a wonderful talk, and we certainly covered some ground today, as always. And obviously Helen and Deb, once again, thanks for putting on such a great event and continually attracting such erudite and interesting guests, and obviously once again to the audience, for the full participation and engagement. It really takes things to another level when there is that external stimulus, and I think it's more fun when with audience participation, when working without a safety net, it creates a better outcome. So thanks to everyone for joining today.
Actually, I noticed a question on YouTube. The person who asked is called Jen. He or she asked, is it possible in the future to compute molecules and atoms in human body by quantum technology, and what kind of diagnostic device would you use?
Yeah, I think there was quite a bit of discussion on that in terms of even on the chat, the Zoom caller pretty much said, on the biomimicry side of things, and also the area of I think there's going to be quite a bit of interesting thing happening in looking at the human body and how, and I think even Zoom caller mentioned that we're already using, a lot of the quantum, in quantum sensing, so human, for example, the example he said was in when somebody's falling, right? So people are, the humans are already using quantum sensing from that standpoint. So there are sensors that are basically being built and researched to look into sensing single cells. So I think, if we're looking at single cells, then eventually maybe there could be a possibility that even single atoms could be looked at, but that remains to be seen. Okay. All right. Well, folks, thank you so much. It's been great conversation, and I'm looking forward, hopefully, if you guys have any questions, I did put my contact information and LinkedIn profile into the chat. Feel free to reach out.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Fantastic, Nardo.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you, guys.